Claire.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Senate Committee on Government Operations Committee meeting. Thank you, Tim, for that. We'll obviously be talking about that bill next week. So we're on H 841 now. This is the act relating to miscellaneous animal welfare procedures. And one of the questions that came up the other day when Lisa Mylott was here was whether the number of dogs at 24 breeding dogs,
35.
or 35, sorry. So we've already changed it, Lisa. No, it's still 35. Was something that we could support or we wanted to change or in whatever fashion. So Mike Covey was expected to be with us. He's the executive director of the Vermont Traditions Coalition, but instead, and you have me at a tremendous disadvantage. Patty, is it?
Patty Richards, Green Mountain Dog Club.
Okay.
Who is she? I've never heard of her.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Patty Richards. I'm from the Green Mountain Dog Club, and I have a kennel of 21 Siberian Huskies, and happy to chat more.
Yeah, we're just trying to get, as we try to do with every piece of legislation, so the proper number and
Yep.
proper regulation of whatever it is that we're trying to fix. I don't know that there's a problem at 35 that would be solved if it went to 24. I'm completely in the dark about this. So help us out.
Yep, so happy. First of all, thank you very much for letting me come in and speak with you. And I know 35 dogs sounds a little cuckoo, but it's a for the Siberian or any sled dog kennel, you'll see very large numbers in terms of dogs. We run 100-mile races. And the 100-mile race, like up in Fort Kent, Maine, there's a large race that we run. It's 10 dogs per sled, and we're generally trying to do 2 or 3 sleds in the races. So we'll have at least 20 to 30 dogs running in this race. And then over the course of the winter, we have a pool of other dogs that are in reserve. Some dogs don't make the cut. Other dogs might get injured. So we generally have a kennel numbers of roughly 40 dogs is not uncommon. And that's actually considered a small kennel for competing in dog sled races. Some of our compatriots have 50 to 60 dogs. So I am concerned about this 35 dog limit because it would hamstring us in terms of being able to compete, being able to offer dog sled rides is what we do for kind of business activity. We offer dog sled rides in the communities and for hire, essentially. We have kids camps. We do bike joring, sled dog. We have an internship through the University of Vermont. So it's kind of our business model. And there's another business in Eden, Vermont. Jim Blair runs the Eden Dog Sled Adventures. And he's easily had well over 60 dogs as part of his pool to run tours for his business. So the 35 number is concerning for kennels in doing dog sled rides and any sort of racing competition in terms of a kennel. And I'll open it with that. And I see hands are up and happy to answer questions.
And I'll just, again, before we go to Senator Bielski, and currently there's no limit. There's no number attached to how many dogs anybody can have. So this would be the first attempt at finding a number. Senator Bielski.
Well, and this bill actually doesn't have a limit on how many dogs you can own. It has a limit on how many intact breeding dogs you can own.
Well,
It is, the way the language is written is that dogs who have been desexed, puppies under 4 months old, do not count towards the 35 limit. So the conversation in here was that having 35 intact dogs for breeding was an awful lot of intact dogs. So we were actually discussing lowering that number, not because it's an ultimate limit, but because of the concern around puppy mills.
Right. Understood. Absolutely understood. And one of the things I would share with you is in terms of our breeding program, we need to have a very wide range of dogs to breed from. So we don't have crossover in genetics. We don't want relationships of the dogs crossing over and have bad breeding. So we require a fairly large intact group of dogs so that we can breed. Um,
How
Yeah,
many intact dogs do you have now?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How many intact dogs do you have currently?
So of the 21 dogs that um, I have 11 that are spayed and neutered right now. So probably about half of our dogs are already spayed and neutered. So
Okay.
certainly,
So you have 10 or 11 intact dogs?
exactly.
If we made it 20 intact dogs, wouldn't that make a reasonable number?
Right now, we're a small kennel because my partner, I'm co-owner with another person. We're a very small kennel. We have had well over 40 dogs in the past.
Intact, well over 40 intact dogs.
Maybe not intact, but close, well over 30 intact. So between the 30, we would hit this 35 limit in our past programs with our dogs.
Yes.
That were all under your ownership. Because I
Yes.
certainly understand as a purebred dog owner myself, the importance of having diversity amongst the line, which is generally why there's breeding outside of the line and breeding with not all internal. I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
And
So
maybe
we have,
should use the term intact in here somewhere, because the first time Senator Bielski said it, I had no idea what you meant.
She used it yesterday.
With all its parts?
Okay, well, forgive me for not
All-
being the obvious, but it's not in the bill.
We use the opposite language in the bill. We
Sexually
say,
sterile.
yes. And so the
right. So within our kennel, we have several lines of dogs that we're bringing genetically down through the different histories. We have literally 3 different lines of dogs that we can breed to just within our kennel, and that allows us to breed for good runners, good physical eating, good behavior issues. We really tightly manage our breeding protocol. We don't sell our puppies. It's very rare that we sell our puppies. We're using them exclusively so that we can have a pool of dogs that we can do our craft with, that we can run, we can do races, we can offer sled dog tours, and that we can participate in the activities that we do. So we do occasionally go outside of our kennel, but we try to maintain the lines that we have because it allows us the genetic diversity so that we can breed. The 35 number it would bump us into a problem if we were back up in the 40 range.
I don't know whether you can suggest a solution, Patty, and maybe Lisa, if you want to join us again at the table, feel free. The problem that I'm trying to figure out is we don't want to give comfort and guidance to puppy mills.
Agreed.
But I'm not sure how to accomplish both ends. Certainly, if you're not selling the dogs, I understand that you're making a living having them run by or in front of a sled. I get that. I don't know the language that we can use to sort of prevent the puppy mills from taking advantage of that number and still not restricting dog sled owners. So
Lisa Milet, Director of Animal Welfare, for the record. I think it's difficult without a licensing scheme. If there was, at whatever point Vermont decides, if it does, that it wants a licensing scheme, then that could be a differentiation that comes up. I think absent some sort of saying you need to be licensed to be this sort of competitor. And if you're doing that, then you're limited to this number of litters, right? Because, or you need to be licensed as a breeder. But I think it's difficult without that sort of delineation to have different numbers. And I don't know what the right number is here. That's why with Representative Waters Evans had reached out to sportsmen and things like that to get a number for the bill. I definitely wouldn't, where they're legitimate breeders, where they're not high volume breeders, and then I don't see how their activity is harmful. That said, it becomes very difficult. Once again, we definitely have puppy mills that have moved into Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, what number doesn't impede sportsmen and competitors, but at least put some cap on breeding so that at some point we can say, no, too many, right?
You said that a lot better than I did.
Well, it's a little bit messy. And so the language here, I think, was drafted in this way, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was drafted this way so that the issue you resolved yesterday about the burden of proof would be resolved in favor of owner having to breed it. So basically to prove intact status, altered status, because it's no more than 35 dogs. So that's the law. But the ones that are sexually sterilized or underage don't count.
Okay.
And so I think that that was an attempt to take that burden of proof in, which is why it's kind of a backwards definition. So there might be refinements of the language that make sense. I don't know that necessarily gets to Ms. Richards' concern that it could limit her breeding pool within her kennel.
Okay.
That's all I remember.
I'm gonna go to Senator Dehowski first, because I think it's related, and Patty.
I wonder, and I wonder what your thoughts are on rather than limiting the number of intact dogs, because there's also other reasons not breeding related that one might choose to keep dog intact.
35 dogs intact.
No. But I'm wondering if instead of focusing on the intact dogs, we could put a limit on how many litters are allowed to be created. So I've seen in some states they have a regulation on like no more than 50 puppies.
It's completely unenforceable unless you have some schemes where people notify you. Georgia exempts 1 litter a year from licensing. It's completely unenforceable because you would have to monitor every single person with a litter to make sure they never had a second one. It's completely unenforceable. So that's the problem with dogs that you own. We already have a monitoring system in place for licensing. And so we already have some structure for asking about that. If it's per puppy per lit, like it's completely.
I just tried to do some research between yesterday and today to try to come up with a solution, because I agree that 35, when we're talking about this breeding, is too many. And so I'm just trying to find a solution. And that said, I have been called to another committee.
Yeah, I was going to suggest in New Hampshire, the way they've dealt with this issue, because we too are concerned about puppy mills. We don't want to see irresponsible breeding, and we want to make sure that the dogs are humanely treated. So we too are concerned in this whole puppy mill issue going on. In New Hampshire, what they did was said any greater than 30 dogs transferred from a kennel, you're considered a pet vendor, and you came under regulations relative to selling puppies. So most of the folks that we know, there are some selling of Siberian Huskies, but that's not the primary reason people have them. They have them to run and partake in the exercise and do the activities that we do. But if you're getting over 30 puppies sold in a year, that's the issue. That's what you want to regulate and control. So New Hampshire's approach to it is anything over 30, you fall under a different category.
Well, there's two concerns. First, so my background is I was a law professor, and I actually specialize in these sort of breeding restrictions. And so I looked at the registration throughout the US among the 50 states. And the problem with every single one where there's a de minimis exemption, which is what you're talking about with you can transfer 29 without being a pet vendor, is that there has to be notification of each of those. There's a lot of research into if you have an exemption without notification regime, everybody cheats, because nobody who's not licensed as a pet vendor admits that this is my 30th and I'm in violation. Instead, they all say this is my first. So unless you have an oversight regime where they provide notice each time they're using that exempt number, you cannot govern it in any way. And in Georgia, they have 1 litter that's exempt, completely unenforceable. Yeah. The other part of it is we are also concerned about people who are increasing risk to Vermonters by rapidly increasing the size of their kennels without proper care. And so we just had a seizure of 55 Huskies that a year before were 25 Huskies. And they're all part of a cruelty case. And that was somebody who competed in races. And the problem is once those numbers start getting high, it gets really easy to tip over into something that is costing tens of thousands of dollars that owner's not going to end up paying. Like somebody has to pay that. And so we are also, I think, concerned about excessive production, even if it's not being transferred on the market, because it tips over into hoarding in some number of cases, which becomes a public problem. And so it's differentiating the responsible kennels. And I know that there's a lot of good sled dog racers in Vermont and good sled dog kennels. We don't, from my perspective, I have no interest in negatively impacting them, but de minimis exemptions without some sort of notification just don't work. And we don't have at this point the ability to set up a full-on licensing regime.
That's next, I think, because then that's your hope is to be able to do that in the next couple of years.
That would be my hope, yeah.
In
Can
the event this
you-
language did, in the event, sorry, in the
Go
event this
ahead.
language did continue, I see that you're not counting dogs less than 4 months. In the
Right.
sled world, after 10 years, the dog stops running. So it would be great not to count those dogs that are intact and over 10 years, because our senior citizens, we just keep them, it's cradle to grave here. We keep them in our pack, and they don't run and participate in the sled races. But I'd hate to have those counted in this number, because that would potentially could drive us over the 35.
But there's the alternate breed. I mean, the point of them being intact is to breed. So why would you keep them? If they've run for 10 years, why would they still be intact?
It's also a cost issue. Sometimes it's dangerous to, if you've got any health issues with a dog, it can be dangerous. It can also be advantageous to spay and neuter, and we do that for our females. But some of the males we'll just keep intact, and we keep them separated so that there's no chance of having accidental litters.
Huh. And I
Our,
thought,
our dogs typically live 14 to 17 years. They're very healthy. Our vet bills are large. We see our vet a lot, and my last year's taxes, we spent over 20,000 in vet bills, just maintaining our health of our kennel. So we're very much in touch with our veterinarian, and we work closely to manage all of our dogs.
this is more complicated than though we spent 90 minutes on the floor talking about this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just put out there, because I know like the decision makers on this is our group over here. I don't have a strong opinion on the number of dogs. It feels a little bit like a Seussical situation of how many dogs is the appropriate amount. And I am concerned that we are spending a lot of time on this, and I don't feel that there is a need to have a limitation to the number of dogs in state statute. So I'm wondering.
She does.
I know she does, and
She's our professional.
I know. That's why I started with the bit about who's the decision makers. Because while I respect your professional opinion, we represent people, not a policy position. So I think at this point, I do think we've spent a lot of time on it. But my only concluding point I would make is we did receive a note from Mike Covey that I wanted to make sure we
Yeah,
commented
just
on.
answer them.
Okay, great. That was my,
What does it say?
please don't go under 20.
Yeah, and there are others that want to come in and
So
talk about.
I would say, I do like to take the expert witness as the expert in the room. And I would say that we, at the moment, keep it 35. I hear Patty and I hear the sled dogs, but there are other dog operations that don't need as many dogs. 10 a sled is maybe the highest need. So I think 35 is a good balance, and I think there are 35 intact dogs. I think that I think I'm happy to move it with 35 intact dogs, because I appreciate that we need to get a handle on licensing. We're never gonna appreciate how many there are.
I guess these are businesses as well. So that's the other thing is the people who
We
have,
regulate a lot of business.
I know. And what I'm saying is we wouldn't regulate a business to say you can't have more than 35 horses. There's no law on that. And I think that we know that the amount of work that one horse takes professionally to be a riding horse or whatever, I don't know anything about the dog world, but you would have staff and you would have large facilities and you might have multiple locations, you know, so I hear what you're saying about the individual who escalates from 25 to 55 unexpectedly. I still don't think that we should put a number in statute that would limit a business from properly functioning. The number of dogs does not determine the quality of life of that dog.
Then you can sunset it and see how it's working. I really think that when the expert is suggesting to us
Okay.
that we limit the number of dogs with an objective, with all the things that she said so far, I'm fully in support. I would have been willing to take it down to 20. So,
Well, I defer to the senior senator from Windsor on this.
yeah, we're allowed to disagree too. It won't be the first time.
Yeah, I'll just point out that Lisa's already testified, that number is arbitrary and it was only suggested in the House as a number, based on what Mike Covey had suggested.
Yeah.
We can move it up or down, or we can, as Senator White is suggesting, eliminate it. I don't know if there's another solution for curtailing the puppy mill attraction to come to Vermont without some sort of restriction.
Exactly.
I don't know what that is. I love the idea of licensing. So if a dog sled company was licensed, they would be exempt, kind of thing, you know?
Well,
And then,
there would be a licensing regime, not necessarily exempt, but maybe based on number capacity for care, right? Like there
Yeah.
could be some where they report their number of workers and that determines ability to have dogs,
however we want to fashion, it, but
whatever.
that would leave out the puppy mills because they wouldn't be able to fall into that category. It's just one thought. I'm torn. I don't really know where to go with it.
Well, you could listen to enough and more testimony.
Yeah.
I'm happy to stay with 35.
Patty, do you have any further suggestions for us?
Yeah, I would ask you to invite some folks in and take more testimony. Jim Blair at Eden Dog Sled Adventures he'd be handcuffed by this. His business is running dog tours for out-of-staters that come out, mainly out-of-staters that come to vacation here in Vermont. And he's certainly had 60 dogs in the past. He doesn't right now, but I know he's planning to ramp up because he needs so many dogs to run the tours. That's his business.
Can you just share with us, how does a dog run a tour?
The dogs pull, they pull the sled.
Oh, they're
and we have
sled dogs.
people,
Okay,
Right,
so they're sled dogs. Got it,
yes.
got it.
We have people in the tour sleds,
Is it Jim Blair, BLAIR?
BLAIR, yes.
Would
Yeah.
you be kind enough to send his contact info to Lynn?
Yes, I will be happy to do that.
And I've asked Mike Covey to have whoever else wants to reach out to us to contact Lynn as well.
Seems like whenever you put a number in,
Yeah, I know.
you run into just.
I don't know.
No,
You can always change them. This is what we do.
Yeah.
Legislature.
And we could sleep on the bill, maybe in the middle of the night, we'll all say, you know what we could do?
15
I do defer to Allison. I'm happy to vote for the bill as it is. But I think I hear exactly what Patty's saying, and I think
we all want to do the right thing. I mean, there's just, and this is the only sort of provision left that we haven't come to a decision about. And if there's a way to, again, dissuade those folks that just breed dogs to sell them as fast as they can make them, and yet recognize that, you know, we have businesses that depend on large numbers of dogs, then we'll have done a good thing. And, yes, Lisa,
Can I ask
please.
a question? Is there any sort of federation or anything that dog sledders belong to that would be a dog sledding federation as opposed to not the AKC, not a general, purebred federation, but is there?
Yeah, there are several clubs. There's North Country Mushers Association, which is a Northeast association of mushers all over from Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts. There is Yankee Siberian Husky Club. There's Siberian Husky Club of America. So there's several clubs and associations that run in sprint races, long distance. We're in the long distance race category. There's other folks that do 3-mile races with teams. Yeah, I'm happy to put get in touch with the leaders of those associations if you'd like to take testimony from those groups.
I don't think we need more than a couple. We're not gonna, with all due respect, make this a career. It's just, we'd like to get to a certain point and be able to move this and, do the right thing. That's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
All right, if you think of anything more, Patty, please stay in touch with Lynn and, you know,
Okay,
if there's any other ideas that come up.
happy to do that, and I will think on it and see if I can come up with any creative solutions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Lisa, anything else?
And part of what I was struggling with is if there's a way to have a different number for registered members of like this competitive group, right? And I don't know if this sets us up with problems with, oh, there's this other sport that we weren't thinking about, right? And that just becomes irrelevant.
Yep.
Then the other thing is, I mean, we are talking about intact dogs. And so they can, I don't know to what extent they all need a breeding pool more than 35 intact dogs, right? Even with somebody who has 60 dogs, some of those dogs they will have already ruled out as breeding candidates. Some of them will have already produced a couple of litters. Some of them will be 10 years old and no longer need. So those all could be altered, could be moved out of the intact category.
Exactly.
But truthfully, I mean, the groups she's talking about have great reputations, like the Eden Dogs like group. I've only been in Vermont for a year and I know about them and know that they're a really reputable group. And so I think that we would very much not, from my perspective, I wouldn't want to impact them. But at the same time, I think that having some limit, and the 35 is what Representative Waters Evans had suggested to her as being something that wouldn't interfere with numbers. But yeah, and ultimately it's on.
Can we just
Senator Moody?
think about it a little bit more?
Yeah. That's fine.
Get more testimony on it, and because there's things that we're not, I can agree with you, there's probably things that we haven't thought about yet. And talk to some other individuals and try to fix it for Alice.
Don't fix it for me, fix it for the
Like,
dogs.
yeah, I think if I'm reading the room correctly, there might be more desire to remove a number than keep it in.
I'd like to keep a number in because I believe that this is what Lisa is suggesting, is we can land on a bigger number, fine. But I think it would be great to be clear that we, you know, what our intent is.
I don't know if Lisa suggested it or the house suggested
Yeah, I think
It was
the
a
house
house.
suggested it.
Oh, so you didn't want to limit number of dogs?
I suggested that, first of all, I was not able to suggest any legislation this year. So when asked for ideas of things that Vermont could think about, on my list was, yeah, one thing to think about is whether or not you want a limit on the number of intact dogs somebody has. I didn't suggest 35.
Right, no, but you suggested limiting the number of intact
That
dogs.
would be one possibility to get to this
Right,
problem.
so taking you at your word. You let alone. And it could be 35, it could be 40, it could be 45, it could be 50, but I'd be happier with the number. And this legislature can change its mind and its number every year if they want.
Okay, well, I know we'll see you back here at some point.
Oh, yeah.
See how it works. Then we put sunsets on it so that we can see how it's working. Report back how's that working? And then by then we'll have hit all the dog owners and they'll be all able to weigh in. Because clearly not everybody knows about this bubble being in motion, and so it would give people an opportunity to weigh in, sort of report it and see how it's doing. And, you know, get a sense of it in a year or two.
Hopefully you're enjoying your year though here.
I am, and other than today, it's been absolutely beautiful out.
Oh,
You know, by now it's already in the 90s with high humidity in Georgia, so this is a beautiful.
So we need the rain though.
We need the rain desperately. Many of our counties are in drought.
Yes.
Your flowers won't grow without rain.
She waters them.
She may
Again,
not have, she might run dry.
after months in Georgia with no rain and 90 degrees and high humidity, here I live basically in a bog. So it's harder for me to. I understand that other people do not live in the middle of bogs, but my dogs dug a 6-inch hole in the backyard because they like Vermont dirt. And there's a
I
constant.
like it to be cool.
There's a well, it's a little hole, but it's got a constant pool of water. They use it as their water pools
Yeah.
because it just fills with water, like it's just water.
Yes.
6 inches down. So,
Okay, well, again, thank you.
thank you very much.
Anything else that we should take up today, Corinne?
She did not say that. It's a wetland, but then we can discuss. 50 feet.
I got it.